So this coming year, I'm most of all looking forward to working with the internal structures of the FYG. So I want to develop the federation's work with MOs mainly, look over meeting efficiency, and see how we can, in the best way possible, make it easier for MOs to both educate and learn from each other through, for example, trainings conducted by the MO themselves. So I would really want to focus on making the federation a more cohesive federation. So it's more organizational than political, I would say, for me. To reach out to a diverse audience and make our structures more inclusive, I think, first of all, that this is a very difficult question, because we are a youth movement that do not have extensive resources, and still we have a lot of people who get burnt out while they are volunteering for the FYG. But I think the most important thing to create a more inclusive structure and make it easier to be engaged is to create different possibilities for different types of engagement. So even if we will not be able to give everyone a financial contribution for their activism, as we are not a rich movement, we can still make sure that there are different ways of contributing without having to give up other work, without having to put too many hours a week on the FYG and still have the feeling that you get something out of it. So I think different kinds of engagement, and also better structures for organizing the time of the EC members. So for the FYG to become more feminist, I think that a big part lies in coming to terms with the informal power structures that are very much existing within the organization. Even if we are labeling ourselves as a very feminist organization, we haven't come to terms with those informal power structures. And I think this is where green movements usually have a big problem, because we are to a large extent using what we call like anarchist methods of taking space, anarchist methods of organizing meetings. And usually when you're using those kind of methods, it's usually people who have better possibilities to talk in the language that is spoken, people who are used to taking a lot of space, and yeah, therefore usually white cis male persons who take the most of the space. So I actually think that a very easy but also a very important first step would be to have clearer meeting structures and more maybe more rigid meeting structures, even if it sounds boring, because patriarchy really shows through structural problems, and therefore we also need to tackle it structurally. So better meeting structures, for example, speaking time, it could be speakers list or statistics over how much people have spoken in meetings, etc. So in the coming year, I wish to see a stronger coordination between the parties. So like, yeah, a common identity and more cooperativeness, and that MO should learn from each other. And very concretely, I would like to see this through, among a lot of other things. For example, smaller online trainings facilitated by the EC and office, but actually conducted by MOs for other MOs. So I would, one way of getting closer to each other is to really make the FYG's work more up. We are doing that to some extent today, but still most of the projects are organized by the FYG for the member organizations, not by the member organizations for the member organizations. And I think that makes the project lack ownership among the member organizations, and therefore they don't feel as responsible for the outcomes. And yeah, so smaller MO online trainings, it's something I would really like to focus on. We are actually working on a concept note for that right now, me and Liam, who is also with me in the EC. And we hope to be able to present it sometime during the autumn. So for me, the most important focus for cooperation between the MOs would be skill and experience sharing and not policy coherency necessarily. I think it's important to have an understanding of that our federation is constituted by so many different kind of green organizations, and I think it's gonna be pretty much impossible to get all of those MOs always into the same line when it comes to policy. What we could though really do is to make sure that the skills that, for example, a lot of Southern MOs have when it comes to activism, demonstrations, campaigns, are also shared to the more Northern and Western parts where the MOs don't have the same skills to the same extent. And at the same time, for example, the more Northern and Western parts of Europe, those MOs maybe have a lot of skills when it comes to debate, article writing, governmental negotiations and stuff like that. And that could be something that MOs maybe in the South and the East could learn more about. So to even out the skills and really focus on skill sharing, that's what I really want to get out of the cooperation. And hopefully that will also make it easier to then discuss policy on a more even level and come to the same conclusions more often than we do today. So when talking about FYG's role within Europe, I really would like to say that we really need to be the strongest and most obvious movement for democracy, for equality, compassion, openness, freedom, and human security that there is in Europe. So it's like easy to think that such values are mainstream and are the norm, but they aren't anymore. And I think we can really see that, not least now in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, but we have been able to see that throughout the last couple of years as well. So it's clear that we are living in difficult times, and it's more important than ever to stand up for what's right. And we need to be active critics, both on the barricades, but maybe even more important in media and in parliaments and in governments all around Europe. So I would really like to very concretely, I think that FYG, that has been a very activist organization for many, many years, needs to still be an activist organization, but also take the step into the corridors and work from inside the system. So that's something I'm looking forward to see FYG developing into. So when thinking about how we can make green policies part of the solution to the current crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic, despite the massive unemployment, rising poverty, and decreasing industrial production, I would, in general, just to begin with, say that green policies are exactly what can meet the current needs and is just right in time. So obviously both capitalism and social democracy are ideas that are not longer working in the same way as they've done. Capitalism, it's very clear, and social democracy is often very nationalistic oriented, I would say, at least in the northern countries. So I really think what we need today to navigate in this aftermath of the COVID-19 are ideas of system change. So new ideas of how the labor market shall be organized, new ideas of consumption, how this should look in the new era of Europe, and also new ideas of what security is, to name just a few examples. For example, we will not be able to focus all of the defense and security money on the military anymore, but maybe rather on crisis preparedness and good health infrastructure and so on. So I think I will probably not have any really concrete answers here, but I really think that we need to pick up the problems that we can see now in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic and really bring them up in the debate together with our green solutions for things, even if they are all just yet very ideological. And then connecting to my own country, I think it's of course the same there. But one thing that I think is extremely important, and where green views can really help with the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, is the solidarity perspective that we have within the Greens. And this is, for example, something where my own country, Sweden, has not really stepped up as much as we have needed to. I mean, Sweden was part of the Frugal Four. Now, when it came to the Corona bonds, something which I thought was shit, in a time like this, when, for example, countries in Eastern Europe and Southern Europe who do not have as much resources as we have in the North, are in need of donations, at least loans, but I would really prefer donations from the northern countries. It's something that we should, of course, participate in. So here I am, actually really ashamed of my own country and all of the other countries who have also been sticking to nationalistic and egocentric perspectives. I definitely hope that when the rest of Europe is facing a second wave, that it will be met with a common response, and that also we in Sweden, who will probably not face a second wave, will be there and help with resources, because obviously there will be countries needing them. More green policy on this. There are so many things that we need to do when it comes to making Europe more intersectionally feminist and inclusive of the LGBTQI community. And I would like to see, of course, many new reforms, not least in family policy, making it more considerate of harmful and conformative structures that are existing in many countries today. So some of the concrete examples would be, for example, prolonged and evenly shared parental leave, and also like a more flexible parental leave. So it would be open to same-sex couples, to other couples who are not made up of a hetero couple, maybe poly couples, just making it more flexible. And I think many countries in Europe are very far away from that. Another very important policy thing is a consent law. I think that it's only Sweden and Denmark who have a consent law right now. And I think it would be amazing if one could work for that on a more European level as well. And a third very concrete thing is same rights for LGBTQI people when it comes to marriage and adoption in all the European countries, because that's not something that we have today, and that's crazy. If I had the choice between passing a law on environmental protection or on social injustice, I would choose social injustice, even if it's incredibly difficult to not choose both, because environmental protection is a prerequisite to efficient social justice, and social justice is a prerequisite to efficient environmental protection. But I would say right now, in the situation we're in, there is such a big social injustice between the countries in Europe with more resources and the countries in Europe with less resources. And I think this is something we need to take into account before we focus on the bigger questions, even if we, of course, need to focus on both at the same time. But social injustice is my choice. If I could implement one European policy instantaneously, that would be prolonged and evenly shared parental leave. Oh, I would, of course, choose pineapples, even if I hate it, because I'm a radical vegan.